In the following interview, Phil Flakes, co-founder of Succession Link, interviews Rick Sany from Sagepoint Financial. Hear firsthand on their experience using the Succession Link platform to facilitate the sale of $61 million in assets under management.
Could you tell me, I guess, a little bit about how you found out about Succession Link?
Let's see. In early 2016, I realized I wanted to start my transition out of the business. At that time, I thought it would take 2 to 3 years, I figured. I actually made a contact through a local FPA meeting, talked to him. That person cleared through TD Ameritrade. I eventually talked to that TD Ameritrade recruiter. I wasn't looking to change broker-dealers, but he turned out to be a good resource, and he connected me with a couple other potential successors, and when that didn't work out, he suggested using Succession Link if I hadn't heard of it, and I had not at that point. And I may have found Succession Link later, but it would certainly help speed up the process of me looking around. Otherwise, I felt like I was at a loss trying to find connections locally, and the broker-dealer I worked through was not very helpful in helping connect me to other successors, potential successors and their family, which was disappointing.
What was your experience like from the time that you created your Succession Link account and maybe the early stages of beginning to interact with other members of the community to ultimately finding a successor for your practice?
The first description of my practice, I looked at other people's descriptions to get an idea of how they were describing their practice. So my first description was pretty terse. It's like 3 or 4 sentences long. And so I started getting responses that were not quite in my field, and I realized I really need to be more specific. And so I actually tweaked my description 2 or 3 times, made it more and more specific about what I thought was important. And as I interacted with potential successors, I realized, that's not the kind of business model that would work with my client base. So then I picked up one more thing that I should include in the description, so it doesn't waste potential successors' time or my time in contacting me. That made a big difference in terms of honing in. There were still contacts that contacted me that I thought they were just kind of broad headhunters that I thought, they're just casting a big net. But there were certainly more other people who were more in line with the way I run my business. So that's one thing I learned, and having interactions with people helped hone that in. I had, it seems like 30 or 40 responses pretty quickly within a few weeks, which, I sifted through some of those. Some, I talked to some on the phone. I interacted with some by email, depending on where they were and what questions they were asking. But one of the things that I realized was that I couldn't have made this many contacts. And that was the power, I thought, of the Succession Link, because I couldn't have made this many contacts by calling all the BDs and asking, hey, is anyone there interested? It would take too much time. So the social networking aspect of this really was powerful.
Great. And so did the 30 or 40 initial messages that you received in the first couple of weeks, did that meet or exceed your expectations, or did you not really have expectations walking into it?
I didn't really know what to expect. So, but I was surprised how many there were. Maybe I thought there would be a handful, but I had quite a few. That was a lot in my mind, especially since I had been maybe interviewing one person every few weeks based on a smattering of contacts through recruiters or other advisors or vendors who knew people. Just it wasn't, my search wasn't very organized in trying to find someone. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, and because once I interacted with a few people, I realized the interaction with other potential successors helped me hone in on what my interests were. I thought I'd read several articles, a book on succession planning, and I thought I had done some of my homework of what I was trying to find. And after interacting with some people, I realized, maybe that other point is an important criteria, and this other one I thought was important wasn't so important. And so that interaction itself helped me create more specific description. And again, that only comes through numbers of being able to, have people ask you questions that maybe about your practice you'd never thought about. And thought, never thought about that. And so that
absolutely,
that helps and makes more efficient future contact. So it's just you have to get getting started is the first point.
Yeah, oftentimes we say, the power of the network is kind of coming in where you think you have it all figured out, but through interactions, as you've expressed, you start to really hone in on specifically what you want. So when did you first start to engage or have a dialogue with the eventual successor or acquirer of your practice?
It was probably about August of 2016.
Okay.
And it turns out that it was someone I had known, and he was engaged in working with another advisor who was retiring, and transitioning his business to my eventual successor. And so I had never, even though I knew this person, I knew both the seller and the buyer. I thought, well, I don't need to contact him because he's already engaged with this other person and won't be able to handle anymore. He won't have any other capacity. So I never really thought about him. But certainly by then, I had a really good idea of what I was looking for. The way I characterize it, I developed two lists when I interacted with people. One was hard questions, black and white questions, no subjectivity at all. If you didn't meet these criteria, our conversation is over. I could have put that list in my listing, but I didn't because I wanted a little more, cast a bigger net. For example, how long have you been in the business? Have you had any disclosures? What's your general business model? Things that are easily described. And then the other list is a subjective list, things that I had to pick up from conversations, more open-ended questions. Well, what do you consider a successful review meeting when someone walks out the door? What makes you want to come to work every day in terms of, not just what you're going to do that day, but what's going to happen, 3 years from now? So it's more, softer questions, more open. And so anyway, this other person I met, or I knew already, I went through the same set of questions with him. I just didn't do it through Succession Link. But those lists, I developed those lists, through the multiple interactions I had with several advisors. Like I said, I had a couple questions, and those questions got longer as I interacted with people. Yeah, one of the surprises I had, I interacted with between 40 and 50 advisors. And one of the surprises that I didn't know why I was surprised at this, but that I met plenty of well-qualified, technically proficient advisors out there that had a great attitude toward their clients. And I wondered afterwards, I thought, well, why was that surprising? And I think I'm affected by the media just like everyone else is, that, there's a bunch of rogue advisors out there. Well, it's the opposite. There's plenty of people who are great advisors. It's just, do they match, the way your style, your clients, et cetera? And that's what Succession Linked helps people do.
Yeah, it's a shame that, the media is only covering the bad apples. But so was anonymity important to you as you went through this process as well?
Because I work for an independent broker-dealer, I don't feel like if they knew I was looking to find a succession advisor, they would come down on me for any negative reason. And in terms of other advisors, anonymity, I guess the only thing people might be concerned about is someone poaching your book of business or letting someone else know you're leaving. My take on it was I let people know I was planning on transitioning out, people meaning my clients, very early on. I told them what my game plan was. It was not like I was going to suddenly spring something on them. So I don't think that was never an issue.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. I think when we initially started out, we thought that was kind of the biggest factor as to why people were feeling so comfortable kind of listing and looking for other folks. But it's good to hear a counter argument to that.
Yeah, I didn't think if you're not listing your clients on there. Your size of your business, who you are, how you can be contacted, and rogue investors who are basically crooks, they make more money doing other bad things than trying to find someone to poach on Succession Link.
Yeah, understood. Okay, and so it sounds like you first interacted with the acquirer in August of 2016. Could you maybe walk me through what the experience? Did you know they were the one when you first started sending messages back and forth because you had a history, or can you maybe walk me through August of 2016 to maybe present?
No, I didn't know they were the one. In fact, I didn't think they were the one a few years ago, and the reason for that is I'd known the person for almost 2 decades. And
oh, wow.
Been in the same business in the same office with him for quite a long time. And he was, less experienced and way back then, and that's sort of the image I had of him from before. So the reason he became available is this other transaction he had going fell apart. The other advisor he was going to acquire left. At that point, I knew, I know he has a capacity and he's interested in expanding his business. So that's the reason why I went back and contacted him. I said, well, we should talk. So I approached him just like I approached anyone through Succession Link was, here's the list of hard questions, here's the list of soft questions. And he had to meet the same criteria. So again, Succession Link wasn't directly involved in that, but a lot of the questions I developed through my use of it certainly helped me interact with him. The first couple of meetings with him, I realized, this has some potential. And at that point, near the end of 2016, I had narrowed it down to 3 or 4 other potential advisors that I'd found through Succession Link. And so it was just a matter of checking back with people on items I may have not have asked, including him, and confirming kills that we talked about before, but I wanted to feel more comfortable with.
Okay. And then so you were able to narrow it down to so maybe a universe of maybe 40 folks that had reached out down to maybe 5 or so. Is that a fair estimate?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then could you maybe walk me through what it looked like working with all 5? It sounds like from time to time you were maybe checking in with them, asking some follow-up questions that maybe did not get answered. But can you walk me through maybe the final stages of how you were kind of making the decision?
So part of the process was going to their office or offices, having my assistant go there, interact with their team, that people we'd be working with during the transition. A couple of them had client events that I was able to attend, so I could actually say hello to some clients and have some conversations there, pretty casual ones. So I was trying to find out more about their business and really whether after the transition started, whether really my clients would really feel comfortable enough to stick with the new advisor. This was after they'd already passed all the hard questions of how long they've been in the business, and I thought their business would fit, but they were still getting used to people. So what I found was probably one of the most challenging aspects of passing on a business that you have some, I'll say, emotional attachment to, because most people who work with clients for years and years feel like they have some connection to them. Most advisors, was whether, and a client asked me this very early on, a year and a half ago, when I told people, I was in the process of transitioning out over the next 3 to 4 years. They said, well, how do I know how to trust this new advisor? And that was kind of this question that kept ringing back at me. So it was trying to get to know the client, the advisors, and their businesses more. And then ultimately, it was lists for me to gather, just a checklist. Well, pros and cons. Well, this person, here are the 3 aspects, here are the aspects I thought were really important about them and are good, and here are the ones that weren't so good, and just comparing them that way. That's how I ultimately made my decision.
Okay. And then did this require you to transition, or did the buying advisor transition to you?
It required neither of us to transition, and that was certainly one of the aspects that was positive. So we were both in the same BD.
Wow, great. Okay.
Yeah, that's right. Wow is, and that's, I think the next most likely person was an independent, and he was looking at transitioning part of his book, the one from my clients, into my BD. But that ultimately there were a couple other geographic issues, and I think he would have been a great successor, but just, he said, there would be too much change for him to change into a BD model versus an independent RIA. I was concerned about all the paperwork and transition clients would have to go through if I changed BDs, just because I know it would be a lot of hard work. And at that point, I was like, well, do I want to get involved in that? So that was one issue that was a real positive about the fortunate events that the person who was succeeding me, actually the deal he was going to do, fell apart. So
got it. Okay. Seems like timing is everything.
It wasn't planned, but...
So when did you finalize then, or at least commit to a transaction date?
It wasn't until, I think it was May of this 2017.
Okay. And are you open to sharing maybe some of the details as far as the term? So meaning how long the transition plan looks?
So the plan on working with the successor in co-meetings, joint meetings with clients, probably for about a year if necessary. If clients make the mental transition to the new advisor before that, I don't seem to be providing much necessary actions to be able to make a transition, then I'll just bow out. So we don't have an exact date, but I figured, well, a year or less is what I'm committing to.
Got it. Okay. And so a couple of questions just to kind of wrap things up. What tips would you give to other current and prospective Succession Link members?
Trying to come up with a description of your business that hits all the salient and important points to you. What value you think you bring to your business, and therefore what value you want a successor to bring. I think that was important in trying to find people who were more similarly matched. And that's where you said something about the anonymity. I said, well, you don't have to describe who your clients are, but you can certainly describe your business and help someone else decide, well, oh, that looks like something they're interested in, or it looks like it's a mismatch from the beginning. I think also if people want to create a smooth transition and they also want to be involved in the transition in any way, for example, like I am, they should probably give themselves a year longer than they think it's going to take. Things happen that they can't control. Things happen to us that we couldn't control. And so, I found myself getting a little frustrated just in the process we were going through. But if it happens quicker than you anticipate, that would be a nice surprise. I think when it takes too long, a person may find themselves getting anxious and cutting corners, and there's no reason at that point to sabotage something that you've kind of laid out and tried to follow through. Again, that's something you can explain and mention in the Succession Link platform. There were some people who literally called me up and said, I can give you money tomorrow and buy your business. And they just figured, you walk out the door. I thought, well, that's interesting. And other people who described that they wanted to be involved in, a transition period. Some people 6 months, some people 2 years. But at least, if you have on that same thought pattern, it makes it more efficient.
Well, thank you for that. As many of these calls as I've done, it's always interesting. Especially for this one, the fact that not one mention of price being a factor until we're in our final questions. But, any call that we go through, it can come up at any point. Some people, it's just about price. And for others, and it sounds like for yourself, it was more about how they could service a client base and just being aligned with the way that you run a business now.
I thought it was interesting a couple of years ago when I read in Investment News an article about succession planning, how grooming your business to produce the highest value on sale was important. And I thought, well, I was wondering, what does that mean? And so the article went on to talk about how for most advisors, their business was their biggest asset and critical to their own personal retirement planning. And I thought, well, that seems kind of silly. That here's a financial planner that if most of their net worth is in one asset, that's a high degree of risk, and that's usually not what we ask our clients to do. Oh yeah, buy everything right here. So if all your eggs are in this basket, you better. I guess that's important to groom it for value. I certainly tried to make things systematic and try to make things so it'd be easy for a successor to take over. But because it's not my biggest asset, I'm much more diversified than that. The price wasn't critical to me being comfortable in retirement. I probably could have gotten more by going outside the broker-dealer, but I think that would have, for clients, I know it would have been harder for me, and I didn't want to do that, and it would have been harder for clients to decide, well, okay, we have to make all these changes just to get this new advisor. So yeah, I think it's unfortunate if people have to get a high price, because I know that shortchanges someone in the end.
Thanks for listening. For more interviews and success stories, click on the link in the description below to learn how Succession Link can help you find the perfect buy, sell, or merger opportunity. Thanks for being a part of the Succession Link community.